The stars looked cold and empty in the dark space around the Kethvari fleet. Admiral Zekthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the display screens that showed his massive armada. 847 warships moved together through the void like a school of metal fish. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Together, they were the largest military force the Kethvari had ever assembled. The Admiral's 4 eyes focused on the tactical display. His fleet had been chasing the humans across 3 star systems for 6 months. Every human colony they found had been empty or barely defended. The humans always ran before the Kethvari arrived. It made Zekthor angry. He wanted a real fight, not this constant chase through space. "Admiral," called his sensor officer, her voice high and excited. "We have detected a human vessel approaching our position." Zekthor turned his massive head toward the officer. His thick, scaled skin showed the battle scars from dozens of wars. "How many ships?" "Just one, sir. A single vessel moving toward our fleet at standard speed." The bridge fell silent. Officers looked at each other with confusion. Zekthor walked to the main display and studied the readings. The human ship was large, bigger than most of their warships, but it was alone. One ship against nearly 900. "Are you certain there are no other human vessels nearby?" Zekthor asked. "Yes, Admiral. Our long-range sensors show empty space in all directions. The humans have sent only this one ship." Zekthor laughed, a deep rumbling sound that made the bridge shake. His officers joined in, their voices creating a chorus of cruel amusement. "The humans have finally lost their minds," he said. "They send one ship to face our entire armada. Perhaps they wish to surrender." The tactical officer, a young Kethvari with bright green scales, raised his hand. "Sir, our intelligence reports say this might be their last warship. We destroyed their main fleet at the Battle of Kepler Station 3 weeks ago. Maybe this is all they have left." "Even better," Zekthor said. "We will destroy this last ship and the human threat will be finished forever. Then we can claim all their worlds and resources." The human vessel continued to approach. Zekthor watched it on the main screen as it grew larger. The ship had a strange design, not like the typical human warships they had fought before. It was longer and more narrow, with unusual markings along its hull. Strange energy readings came from various points on its surface. "What is the ship's designation?" Zekthor asked. The communications officer checked his console. "The vessel identifies itself as the UES Defiance, Admiral. Human classification appears to be a heavy cruiser." "A cruiser against our entire fleet?" Zekthor shook his head. "The humans truly have become desperate. Signal the fleet to assume attack formation. We will end this quickly." Across the vast emptiness of space, 847 Kethvari warships began to move. They formed a massive wall of metal and weapons, stretching for thousands of kilometers. Each ship bristled with plasma cannons, missile launchers, and energy weapons. The formation was designed to destroy entire fleets, not single vessels. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Captain Sarah Chen stood quietly before the main view screen. She was a small woman compared to most humans, but her eyes held the cold determination of someone who had seen too much war. Around her, the bridge crew worked at their stations with calm efficiency. No one spoke unless necessary. They all knew what they were here to do. "Distance to the enemy fleet?" Chen asked. 2 million kilometers in closing, Captain," replied her navigation officer. "They're forming up in standard Kethvari attack formation. Looks like they want to hit us with everything at once." Chen nodded. She had studied Kethvari tactics for years. They preferred overwhelming force over clever strategy. They would try to destroy the Defiance with massive firepower from long range. It was predictable and exactly what she had hoped for. "Any communications from the enemy fleet?" she asked. The communications officer turned in her chair. "Nothing yet, Captain. They seem content to let their weapons do the talking." "They will contact us," Chen said. "The Kethvari always want to gloat before they attack. Admiral Zekthor will want to hear us beg for mercy." Behind Captain Chen, her executive officer stepped closer. Commander James Park had served with Chen for 5 years. He knew her better than anyone on the ship. "Captain, the crew is ready. All systems are operating at peak efficiency. We can begin the operation on your command." Chen looked around the bridge at her crew. 12,000 people had volunteered for this mission. Every single person on the ship knew they might never see Earth again. They had families, friends, and lives waiting for them at home. But they had chosen to be here in this place at this moment. They trusted her to make their sacrifice meaningful. "How long until we reach optimal range?" Chen asked. 18 minutes at current speed, Captain. Good, maintain course and speed. Let them think we're just going to fly straight into their guns. The Defiance continued toward the massive Kethavari fleet. To any observer, it looked like suicide. One small ship against hundreds of enemies. The tactical computers on both sides calculated the outcome as certain destruction for the human vessel. But Captain Chen knew something the Kethavari did not. The Defiance was not just another warship. It was the result of humanity's greatest scientific minds working together in secret for 3 years. Every system on the ship represented technology that pushed the boundaries of what was thought possible. The weapons, the engines, the hull, even the life support systems had been redesigned from the ground up. More importantly, the Defiance carried something the Kethavari had never encountered before. Human desperation had a way of creating miracles. When their backs were against the wall, humans did not simply fight harder. They fought smarter. They broke rules that others thought could not be broken. Incoming transmission from the enemy flagship, the communications officer announced. Put it on screen, Chen ordered. The view screen flickered and showed the bridge of the Kethavari flagship. Admiral Zekthor stood in the center, his massive form towering over his crew. His 4 eyes glared at the camera with undisguised hatred. Human vessel. Zekthor's voice was deep and threatening. I am Admiral Zekthor of the Kethavari Empire. You are outnumbered nearly 900 to 1. Surrender now and I will make your deaths quick. Captain Chen stepped forward so the Admiral could see her clearly. She stood straight and calm, showing no fear. Admiral Zekthor, I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Ship Defiance. I have a message for you from the people of Earth. Speak your final words, human. Chen's expression did not change. Her voice was steady and cold. You have 24 hours to withdraw all Kethavari forces from human space. If you refuse, we will destroy your fleet and pursue the survivors back to your homeworlds. This is your only warning. For a moment, there was complete silence on both bridges. Then Admiral Zekthor began to laugh. His officers joined in, their voices creating a wall of mocking sound. The laughter went on for nearly a minute before Zekthor could speak again. One ship, he gasped between laughs. One tiny human ship threatens to destroy my entire armada. Your species has truly lost its sanity. Captain Chen waited for the laughter to stop. When it finally did, she spoke again. Admiral, you have been warned. What happens next is your choice. She nodded to her communications officer, who cut the transmission. The view screen returned to showing the approaching Kethavari fleet. All stations prepare for combat operations, Chen announced. It's time to show them what humans can do. Admiral Zekthor stood on his bridge, still chuckling about the human captain's ridiculous threat. Around him, his officers shared his amusement. The idea that one ship could threaten their massive fleet was beyond absurd. It was the kind of joke that warriors would tell for generations. Should we destroy them now, Admiral? Asked his weapons officer, eager to end this farce. Not yet, Zekthor replied, waving one of his forearms. Let us see what other foolish things the humans will say. Perhaps they will entertain us further before we kill them. On the tactical display, the human ship continued its approach. It maintained a steady speed, showing no sign of fear or hesitation. This puzzled Zekthor slightly. In his experience, prey animals usually tried to run when they realized they were trapped, but this human ship kept coming straight toward his fleet. Admiral, the communications officer called out. The human ship is requesting another communication channel. Put them through, Zekthor said. I want to hear more of their threats. Captain Chen's face appeared on the screen again. This time she was not alone. Behind her stood a tall man in a military uniform and a woman with the insignia of a ship's engineer. All 3 humans looked calm and professional. Admiral Zekthor, Chen began, I notice you have not begun withdrawing your forces from human space. This concerns me. Zekthor leaned forward, his massive head filling the screen on his end. Human, your concern is misplaced. You should be worried about your own survival, not our movements. I am worried about survival, Admiral. Yours and your crew's survival. The bridge of the Kethavari flagship erupted in laughter again. Several officers had to hold on to their consoles to keep from falling over. Zekthor himself laughed so hard that tears ran down his scaled cheeks. Please, human, he gasped. Continue. Your comedy is most enjoyable. Chen waited for the laughter to die down. Her expression never changed. Admiral, may I ask you a question about Kethavari military doctrine? Speak, Zekthor said, wiping tears from his eyes. In all your wars, have you ever encountered an enemy who willingly sent a single ship against a superior force? Zekthor thought about this. It was actually a good question. In his 40 years of military service, he had never seen such tactical foolishness. No, human. Most species understand basic mathematics. Then perhaps you should ask yourself why we are different. For the first time since the conversation began, Zekthor stopped smiling. He studied the human captain's face more carefully. There was something in her eyes, a confidence that seemed out of place given her situation. It was the look of someone who knew something he did not. "What game are you playing, human?" he asked. "No game, Admiral. Simple mathematics, as you put it. You have 847 ships. We have one. But numbers are not the only factor in warfare, are they?" Chen turned to the man standing beside her. "Commander Park, please show the Admiral our ship's specifications." The human officer stepped forward. "Admiral Zekthor, the UES Defiance is not a standard warship. It is a prototype vessel incorporating technology developed specifically to counter Kethvari tactical doctrine." "Impossible," Zekthor snorted. "Human technology is primitive compared to ours, is it?" Commander Park asked. "When was the last time your scientists developed anything new, Admiral? Your ships use the same weapons, the same shields, the same engines that your people have used for centuries. You believe that bigger is always better?" The human officer gestured to something off-screen. "Humans think differently. We believe that smarter is better than bigger. More efficient is better than more powerful. And sometimes one perfect tool is worth more than 1,000 crude ones." Zekthor felt a small chill run down his spine. There was something about the way these humans spoke that was unsettling. They seemed too calm, too confident. No species facing extinction should sound this sure of themselves. "Admiral," Chen said, regaining his attention, "I want you to understand something important. We did not come here to die gloriously. We came here to win. With one ship against our armada? Yes." The simple, direct answer hung in the space between them. Zekthor studied the human captain's face. He had interrogated many prisoners over the years. He could usually tell when someone was lying or bluffing. But this human showed no signs of deception. She truly believed what she was saying. "Show me," Zekthor said finally. "I beg your pardon? Show me what makes you so confident. Demonstrate the superior human technology." Chen nodded to someone off-screen. "Very well, Admiral. But I want you to remember that you asked for this demonstration." The communication ended. Zekthor stared at the empty screen for a moment, then turned to his tactical officer. "What are the humans doing?" "Nothing unusual, sir. They continue to approach at the same speed. No weapons have been powered up, no shields activated. Energy readings? Still the same strange signatures we detected earlier, Admiral. Our computers cannot identify the source." Zekthor walked to the main tactical display. The human ship appeared as a small dot moving toward his massive fleet formation. It looked insignificant, like a single fish swimming toward a net, but something about this situation felt wrong. "Sir," the sensor officer called out, "I'm detecting an energy buildup from the human vessel. Weapons? I'm not sure, sir. The energy pattern is unlike anything in our databases." On the main screen, the UES Defiance began to change. Lights appeared along its hull, starting from the bow and moving toward the stern. But these were not normal ship lights. They pulsed with an inner fire that seemed to bend space around them. "What are they doing?" Zekthor muttered. His question was answered a moment later. The space around the human ship began to shimmer like heat waves rising from hot pavement. The very fabric of reality seemed to ripple and fold. Then, without warning, the Defiance simply disappeared. "Where did it go?" Zekthor roared. "Unknown, sir. All sensors show empty space where the ship was located." "Find it. Scan everything. A ship that size cannot just vanish." His crew worked frantically at their stations. Sensors swept through every frequency, searching for any trace of the human vessel. Long-range detectors probed the surrounding space. Nothing. The UES Defiance had simply ceased to exist. "Admiral," the communications officer said, his voice shaking slightly. "Incoming transmission from the human ship. That's impossible. There is no ship. The signal is coming from everywhere, sir. All around us. Put it through." Captain Chen's image appeared on the screen again. Behind her, the bridge of the Defiance looked exactly the same as before. But something was different about the quality of the transmission. It seemed to have more depth, more presence. "Admiral Zekthor," Chen said, "I hope that demonstration was educational." "Where are you?" Zekthor demanded. "We are exactly where we need to be, Admiral. The question is, are you ready to listen to reason?" Zekthor looked around his bridge. His officers stared at their instruments with confusion and growing fear. None of their sensors could locate the human ship, yet they were clearly still there. The technology required to achieve such an effect was beyond anything the Kethavari had ever encountered. "What do you want?" he asked. "The same thing I wanted before, Admiral. 24 hours to withdraw from human space." "And if we refuse?" Chen's expression grew cold. "Then you will discover what happens when humans stop playing by the rules of civilized warfare." The transmission ended again. Admiral Zekthor stood in the silence of his bridge, staring at the empty screen. For the first time in his long military career, he felt truly afraid. Not of death in battle, but of something far worse. He was afraid that he had severely underestimated his enemy. "Sir," his tactical officer whispered. "Orders?" Zekthor looked at the display showing his massive fleet. 847 warships, all the pride and power of the Kethavari Empire, against one human vessel that his sensors could not even find. "Maintain course," he said finally, "but increase sensor sweeps. I want to know where that ship is." But deep inside, a voice whispered that knowing where the human ship was might not be enough. Something had changed in the balance of this battle, and Admiral Zekthor was beginning to suspect that numbers alone would not be enough to win. The 24 hours passed like a slow countdown to disaster. Admiral Zekthor had not slept, eaten, or left his bridge. His crew worked in shifts, constantly scanning space for any sign of the human vessel. They found nothing. The UES Defiance remained invisible to every sensor, every detector, every instrument they had. When the deadline arrived, Zekthor made his choice. He would not retreat from a single human ship no matter what tricks they could perform. The honor of the Kethavari Empire was at stake. His ancestors would curse his name if he showed weakness before an inferior species. "All ships," he announced across the fleet communication channel, "prepare for battle. We will advance on the human vessel's last known position and destroy them with overwhelming firepower." The massive fleet began to move forward. 847 warships arranged themselves in attack formation, their weapons charging with deadly energy. Whatever technology the humans were using to hide their ship, it would not protect them from the combined firepower of an entire armada. "Sir," the sensor officer called out, "I'm detecting multiple energy signatures ahead." "The human ship?" "I think so, sir. But the readings are strange. It appears as though there are several ships instead of one." Zekthor frowned. "Show me." The main display changed to show the tactical situation ahead of the fleet. Where there had been empty space before, now there were dozens of energy contacts. They appeared and disappeared like ghosts, never staying in one place long enough for a weapons lock. "How many contacts?" Zekthor asked. "Difficult to say, sir. The signatures keep shifting. Possibly 30 to 40 vessels. Impossible. Our intelligence shows the humans have no reserve fleet. This must be some kind of sensor trick." But even as he said it, Zekthor felt doubt creeping into his mind. The energy signatures were becoming stronger and more defined. Whatever was out there was getting closer. "Admiral," the communications officer announced, "incoming message from the human captain." Captain Chen appeared on the screen for the third time. But now she was not standing calmly on her bridge. She was seated in what looked like a command chair, surrounded by displays showing tactical information. "Admiral Zekthor," she said, "you have chosen to ignore our warning. This disappoints me. Your tricks will not save you, human. We will destroy your ship and any others you may have hiding in the darkness." "Others?" Chen looked puzzled for a moment, then smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Admiral, you still do not understand what you are facing. Enlighten me. You are looking at sensors that show multiple ships because you cannot comprehend what the UES Defiance actually is. Your minds are limited by old ideas about how warships should work." The tactical display behind Chen changed, showing a view of space from the human ship's perspective. In the distance, the massive Kethavari fleet approached like a wall of metal and weapons. "Admiral, meet the real UES Defiance." The space around the human ship began to shimmer again, but this time, instead of disappearing, the vessel began to change. The single hull started to separate along invisible lines. Sections broke away from each other, revealing themselves to be individual ships that had been locked together. Zekthor watched in growing horror as the human vessel split apart like a flower opening its petals. What had appeared to be one ship was actually dozens of smaller vessels, each one breaking free and moving independently through space. "Impossible," He breathed. Not impossible, Admiral. Just different. Humans do not build ships the way other species do. We do not believe that bigger always means better. On the display, the individual human vessels spread out across space. Each one was smaller than a typical HFY warship, but they moved with incredible speed and grace. They darted between each other in complex patterns like a school of fish or a flock of birds. How many ships? Zekthor demanded of his tactical officer. 200 contacts, sir, all showing active weapons and defense systems. Still outnumbered, Zekthor said, though his voice lacked conviction. 200 against 800. We maintain numerical superiority. Captain Chen heard him somehow despite the closed communication channel. Numbers, Admiral? Let me show you why numbers are not everything. The human vessels suddenly accelerated toward the HFY fleet. They moved faster than any ship should be able to move, crossing vast distances in seconds. As they approached, they began to fire. The weapons that emerged from the human ships were unlike anything in Zekthor's experience. Instead of simple energy beams or plasma bolts, they fired complex constructs of light and force that twisted through space like living things. Some shots split apart mid-flight, becoming multiple projectiles that struck different targets. Others curved around obstacles, seeking their targets with intelligent persistence. Return fire, Zekthor ordered. All ships engage the human vessels. His fleet responded with a devastating barrage. Thousands of weapons fired simultaneously, filling the space between the fleets with energy and death. It should have been enough to destroy any enemy force, no matter how fast or clever. But the human ships were no longer where they had been when the HFY weapons fired. They moved in 3 dimensions, diving and climbing through space with impossible agility. Most of the enemy fire passed harmlessly through empty vacuum. The few shots that did connect with human vessels produced another surprise. The ships did not explode or break apart as expected. Instead, they absorbed the energy and seemed to grow stronger. Their own weapons fired with increased intensity after being hit. Report, Zekthor shouted over the noise of battle. Multiple hits on human vessels, sir, but no confirmed kills. Our weapons appear to be ineffective against their hull material. What about our losses? The tactical officer's face was pale. 17 ships destroyed, sir. 23 more with critical damage. 40 HFY warships lost in the first exchange, against an enemy that had taken no losses at all. Zekthor stared at the tactical display in disbelief. This was not how battles were supposed to work. How are they doing this? He muttered. His science officer overheard the question. Sir, preliminary analysis suggests the human ships are using some form of adaptive armor. Their hull material changes its properties in response to incoming weapons. Our plasma cannons are actually making them stronger. And their weapons? Unknown technology, sir. The projectiles appear to be guided by artificial intelligence. They learn from our evasive maneuvers and adapt their attack patterns accordingly. Zekthor watched as another wave of human weapons found their targets. Each shot was more accurate than the last, as if the weapons were studying his ships and learning their weaknesses. More HFY vessels exploded in brilliant flashes of light. All ships change to kinetic weapons, he ordered. If energy weapons make them stronger, we will try physical projectiles. The fleet's weapons systems reconfigured, switching from energy-based armaments to mass drivers and railguns. Solid metal projectiles began streaking toward the human vessels at incredible speeds. For a moment, it seemed like the change in tactics might work. Several human ships were struck by the kinetic projectiles and showed signs of damage, but their response was swift and terrifying. The human weapons changed as well. Instead of energy constructs, they began firing projectiles of their own. But these were not simple metal slugs. They were complex mechanisms that split apart just before impact, releasing clouds of smaller projectiles that spread like deadly flowers. Each kinetic round fired by the humans became dozens of smaller rounds. Where the HFY fired 1 projectile, the humans fired 50 in return. The mathematics of the battle shifted again, this time even more dramatically in favor of the smaller human force. Sir, the tactical officer called out, his voice cracking with stress. We've lost over 100 ships. The humans have adapted to our kinetic weapons as well. Zekthor gripped the arms of his command chair so tightly that his claws left marks in the metal. Everything his people knew about warfare was proving useless against these humans. They did not fight like any species he had ever encountered. Admiral, Captain Chen's voice came over the communication channel again. Are you beginning to understand? Understand what? Zekthor growled. Humans do not fight fair, Admiral. We do not believe in honorable combat or glorious battle.
We believe in winning.
And we have had 3 years to prepare for this moment. On the tactical display, the human vessels regrouped and began their next attack. They moved like a single organism, each ship knowing exactly where the others would be. Their coordination was perfect, as if they shared a single mind. 3 years, Chen continued, to study your tactics, your weapons, your technology. 3 years to design systems specifically created to counter everything you might throw at us. Did you really think we would send our last ship to die gloriously in a hopeless battle? Zekthor realized with growing horror that he had walked into a trap. This was not a desperate last stand. It was an execution. The humans had lured his entire fleet to this place to demonstrate their new technology. They were using his armada as a testing ground for weapons designed to kill Kethavari. "What are you?" he whispered. "We are what happens when a species learns to fight smarter instead of harder, Admiral. We are what happens when humans stop pretending to be civilized." The battle had been raging for 2 hours, and Admiral Zekthor watched his mighty armada crumble before his eyes. More than 200 Kethavari warships had been destroyed, their wreckage scattered across the battlefield like broken toys. Yet the human vessels seemed untouchable, dancing through space with deadly grace. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, voice heavy with despair, "we're detecting something new. The human ships are changing again." Zekthor turned to the main display. The human vessels, which had been fighting as separate units, were beginning to move in tighter formations. As he watched, groups of 10 ships moved closer together until they were almost touching. Then something extraordinary happened. The ships began to merge. "What are they doing now?" Zekthor demanded. "The smaller vessels appear to be combining into larger units, sir. Our sensors show them physically linking together." On the screen, Zekthor watched as the human ships transformed before his eyes. 10 vessels would join together to form a single, larger warship. Then that ship would combine with another group to become something even bigger. The process continued until there were only 20 human ships left on the battlefield. But these were not the same ships that had separated from the original Defiance. Each new vessel was massive, bristling with weapons and defenses that seemed to have been multiplied rather than simply added together. They moved with the same impossible speed as the smaller ships, but now they carried the firepower of entire fleets. "Impossible," Zekthor breathed. "Ships cannot work that way." "Admiral," his science officer called out, "I'm reading energy signatures unlike anything we've ever encountered. These combined vessels appear to be generating power levels that should be physically impossible." The newly formed human ships opened fire. The weapons they produced were beyond devastating. Single shots punched through multiple Kethavari vessels, destroying them in perfect lines. Energy beams swept across space like cutting tools, slicing through hulls as if they were made of paper. "All remaining ships," Zekthor ordered, "concentrate fire on a single human vessel. If we can destroy one of them, perhaps we can learn how to fight the others." The surviving Kethavari warships, nearly 400 strong, focused their weapons on the nearest human ship. Thousands of energy bolts and kinetic projectiles converged on the target. For a moment, Zekthor felt hope. Surely no ship could survive such concentrated firepower. The human vessel disappeared in a brilliant explosion of light and energy. When the glare faded, empty space remained where the ship had been. The Kethavari crew cheered, thinking they had finally achieved a victory. Their celebration lasted exactly 3 seconds. The destroyed human ship reappeared, completely undamaged. It materialized in the same position it had occupied before the attack, as if nothing had happened. Then it opened fire on the Kethavari ships that had just attempted to kill it. The return volley was merciless. Every ship that had participated in the attack on the human vessel was destroyed in a single coordinated strike. 73 Kethavari warships died in less than 10 seconds. "How?" Zekthor whispered. "How did they survive? How did they come back?" Captain Chen's voice answered him over the communication channel. "Admiral, you are thinking about this problem incorrectly. You keep trying to understand our technology using your own knowledge. But human engineering does not work the way Kethavari engineering works." "Then explain it to me," Zekthor roared. "What are you?" "We are a networked intelligence, Admiral. Every ship you see is not a separate vessel. They are all parts of a single distributed system. When you destroyed one ship, you did not kill it. You simply forced it to relocate." The tactical display changed to show a new view of the battlefield. Instead of seeing individual ships, it now showed connections between the human vessels. Lines of light linked every ship to every other ship, creating a web of communication and coordination that spanned the entire battle zone. Each vessel contains a complete backup of every other vessel, Chen continued. Our crews, our memories, our capabilities. When you destroy one ship, its consciousness and abilities immediately transfer to the nearest available platform. We are not 20 ships, Admiral. We are one ship with 20 bodies. Zekthor felt his world crumbling around him. Everything he understood about warfare, about technology, about the nature of reality itself seemed meaningless in the face of this revelation. The humans had not just built better weapons or stronger ships. They had created something that transcended the very concept of individual vessels. But that's not the most important thing you need to understand, Chen said, her voice taking on a colder tone. The real question you should be asking is not how we work, but why we are here. To destroy my fleet, Zekthor said bitterly. No, Admiral. We could have done that in the first 10 minutes of this battle. We have been holding back, demonstrating our capabilities gradually so that you would understand the futility of resistance. As if to prove her point, the human ship suddenly accelerated toward the remaining Kethvari fleet. They moved faster than anything should be able to move, crossing the distance between the forces in seconds. But instead of opening fire, they stopped just outside weapons range. We are here to deliver a message, Chen said. Not just to you, but to every species in this part of the galaxy. Humanity is no longer the weak prey that you have been hunting. We have evolved beyond your ability to threaten us. The human ships began to circle the Kethvari fleet like predators stalking their prey. But they did not attack. They simply moved in perfect formation, demonstrating their complete dominance of the battlefield. Look at your tactical display, Admiral. What do you see? Zekthor looked. His remaining ships were completely surrounded by the human vessels. There was no escape route, no tactical advantage he could exploit. His fleet was trapped in a cage of enemy ships that could destroy them all at any moment. I see defeat, he admitted. No, Admiral. You see choice. We could kill every one of your ships right now. We could pursue the survivors back to your homeworlds and destroy your entire civilization. We have the power to make the Kethvari Empire nothing more than a historical footnote. The human ships stopped moving, holding their positions around the trapped Kethvari fleet. The silence stretched between the two forces like a held breath. But we will not do this, Chen continued. Not because we lack the capability, but because we choose not to. Humanity has learned something that your species has not yet discovered. Sometimes the greatest victory is the one that does not require total destruction of your enemy. What do you want? Zekthor asked. We want you to leave human space and never return. We want you to take this message back to your government and your military leaders. Tell them what you have seen here today. Tell them that humanity has changed. The human ships began to separate, moving back to give the Kethvari fleet room to maneuver. But Zekthor knew it was not a sign of weakness. It was a display of confidence. The humans were so certain of their superiority that they could afford to give their enemies space. Go home, Admiral, Chen said. Take your surviving ships and your survivors and leave this place. Return to your people and tell them that the age of easy conquest is over. There are predators in the galaxy now who hunt the hunters. Zekthor looked around his bridge. His officers stared at their instruments with haunted expressions. They had watched their invincible armada reduced to a fraction of its original strength by an enemy they still did not fully understand. And if we refuse to leave? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Then we will demonstrate the difference between a warning and an execution. The threat hung in the space between them, as cold and final as the vacuum itself. Admiral Zekthor had spent his entire life in military service. He understood tactics, strategy, and the mathematics of warfare. And every calculation told him the same thing. The battle was over. It had been over since the moment the human ship revealed its true nature. Everything that had happened since then had been nothing more than a lesson in the futility of challenging humanity's new evolution. All ships, he ordered quietly. Prepare for withdrawal. The surviving Kethvari ships limped away from the battlefield like wounded animals seeking shelter. Admiral Zekthor stood on his bridge watching the human vessels on his display. They made no move to pursue or attack. They simply held their positions, allowing the defeated fleet to retreat. 312 ships remained of his once mighty armada. More than 500 vessels had been destroyed or disabled in a battle that lasted less than 4 hours. The greatest military force in HFY history had been crushed by a single human ship that was not actually a single ship at all. "Admiral," his communications officer said quietly, "the human captain is requesting one final communication." Zekthor nodded wearily. "Put her through." Captain Chen appeared on the main screen one last time. Behind her, the bridge of the Defiance looked calm and orderly. There were no signs of battle damage, no indication that they had just fought against overwhelming odds. The humans looked as fresh as they had when the encounter began. "Admiral Zekthor," Chen said, "before you leave, there is something else you need to understand." "What more could there be?" Zekthor asked bitterly. "You have already shown me that everything I thought I knew about warfare was wrong." "This is about the nature of humanity itself, Admiral. You came here expecting to face a dying species, making one last desperate stand. But the truth is very different." Chen gestured to something off-screen. "The UES Defiance is not our last ship, Admiral. It is our first." Zekthor felt his blood turn to ice. First what? "The first of a new generation of human warships. We have been building more while we fought your people across 3 star systems. Many more." The display behind Chen changed to show a view of deep space. At first, Zekthor saw nothing unusual. Then one by one, stars began to disappear, not fade away or dim, but simply vanish as something massive moved between them and the camera. "Admiral, meet the UES Defiance's sister ships." The darkness resolved itself into shapes. Hundreds of ships, each one identical to the Defiance, hung motionless in the void. They stretched away into the distance until they were lost in the star field. Each one was large enough to split into 200 individual combat vessels. Each one carried the firepower to destroy entire fleets. "How many?" Zekthor whispered. "Enough, Admiral. More than enough." Zekthor tried to count the ships on the display, but there were too many. Hundreds, certainly. Perhaps thousands. Each one capable of doing what the Defiance had just done to his armada. The implications were staggering. "You could have destroyed us all," he said. "Yes. We could have sent a dozen ships instead of one. We could have eliminated your entire fleet without a single loss on our side. But that was never the point of this exercise." "Then what was the point?" "To send a message, Admiral. Not just to the HFY Empire, but to every aggressive species in this part of the galaxy. Humanity is no longer prey. We are no longer the weak civilization that others can attack with impunity." Chen stepped closer to the camera. "For generations, species like yours have seen humans as an easy target. We were peaceful, so you thought we were weak. We tried to solve problems with words instead of weapons, so you thought we were cowards. You were wrong on both counts." The display changed again, showing images of human colonies that had been attacked by the HFY, cities in ruins, families fleeing their homes, children crying over the bodies of their parents. The cost of the war and human suffering was laid bare for Zekthor to see. "Every human who died in this war made the survivors a little bit harder," Chen continued. "Every colony you destroyed taught us a little more about the realities of galactic politics. Every family that was torn apart by your aggression added to our determination to never be victims again. So you became monsters instead," Zekthor said. "No, Admiral. We became human. This is what my species looks like when we stop pretending that the universe is a civilized place. This is what happens when humans decide to embrace the darkness that every sentient species carries within them." Chen walked to another part of her bridge, the camera following her movement. Around her, the human crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. They looked ordinary, unremarkable. But Zekthor now knew what they were capable of. The Defiance and her sister ships represent something new in galactic warfare, Admiral. We have taken the best of human ingenuity, human determination, and human ruthlessness, and we have given it the tools to reshape the balance of power in this region of space. "What do you intend to do with such power?" Zekthor asked. "That depends entirely on what others choose to do with theirs," Chen replied. "Species that leave humanity alone will find us to be the same peaceful neighbors we have always been. We have no desire for conquest or empire. We simply want to exist in peace." The camera pulled back to show Chen standing in front of a large window. Through it, the massive human fleet was visible, a constellation of deadly stars hanging in the void. But species that threaten human worlds or human lives will discover that we have evolved beyond their ability to harm us. They will learn that attacking humanity is no longer a simple matter of military superiority. It has become a question of survival. And if we refuse to heed your warning, Zekthor asked, though he already suspected the answer, then we will demonstrate the difference between a lesson and an extermination, Admiral. The choice, as always, will be yours to make. The communication ended for the final time. Zekthor stood in silence, staring at the empty screen. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. They were skilled warriors who had served him faithfully for years. But he could see the fear in their eyes, the knowledge that they had encountered something beyond their understanding. "Sir?" his navigation officer asked quietly. "Course for home?" "Yes," Zekthor said. "Best possible speed." As his fleet began its long journey back to HFY space, Zekthor composed the report he would have to give to his superiors. How could he explain what had happened here? How could he make them understand that humanity had become something new and terrible? He would tell them about the single ship that had destroyed more than half of their greatest fleet. He would describe weapons that learned and adapted, hulls that grew stronger under fire, vessels that could merge and separate at will. He would explain about the networked intelligence that made every human ship into a part of something larger and more dangerous than any individual warship. But most importantly, he would tell them about the vast fleet of human ships waiting in the darkness, ships that could have ended the war in a single devastating strike, but had chosen instead to deliver a warning. The mercy they had shown was perhaps more frightening than their weapons. It spoke of confidence so absolute that they could afford to let their enemies live. The HFY Empire would have to choose its path carefully. They could accept the new reality and find ways to coexist with humanity's evolved nature, or they could continue their aggressive policies and face the consequences. As Admiral Zekthor looked out at the stars, he hoped his people would choose wisdom over pride, because he had seen what happened when humans stopped playing by the old rules of warfare. He had witnessed the birth of something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Behind him, growing smaller but never forgotten, the human fleet maintained its patient vigil. 20 ships that were actually 4,000 ships waiting in the darkness for the next species that would mistake human restraint for weakness. The age of easy conquest was indeed over. In its place had come something far more dangerous, the age of human evolution. And the galaxy would never be the same.